Yeah. Okay, the Gentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Gentry. The Gentry Podcast. The Gentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to the Jentry Podcast. Today, we have an incredible guest. I'm your host, Jonathan Mason, and with me, I have Michael, Big Mike Fési Sr. He is a legend in Louisiana. He is a long-term businessman running PCM Inc. for over 30 years. And he is also the state senator of Louisiana, representing District 20. Now, Big Mike is a straight shooter, and I love it. He speaks from the heart, and he serves his constituents through and through. Big Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate it. Now, let's get right into it. As I always start, what is the special sauce? What makes Louisiana the best place to live in the United States?
Well, let's put it this way. It's the people first, because we all love for anybody to come visit. The next thing is our culture, our food. Everybody loves our food. In fact, me having a pipeline company and working out of state a lot of times, when I get people here, they just don't want to leave. We have the tremendous fishing, hunting, everything you can think of, boating. Just the environment is perfect. We got good seasons year round. It's not like you get frozen out or everything. But one thing we did happen last year, the first time ever on record, here in Houma, Louisiana, we had a 10-inch snow in January, and it was unbelievable. I mean, the grandkids went nuts over it because that's, and you know, but we're creative down here. So we get four-wheelers and start pulling the skimboards around and on the snow, because that was the only thing we had at the time, but they had a blast.
I love that. And you alluded to one thing, and I have been to Louisiana, that culture. It's like a vibe down there. The way you guys treat people, it's just beautiful. And I didn't know about the 10 inches of snow, but that is incredible. Now, let's start from the beginning, Big Mike. What was your childhood like? And did you always know that you wanted to get into public service?
Well, I looked at it like this. Coming up at a young age, I got married, me and my wife. I was 20 years old, had kids right away. So it puts you in a position that you got to really work hard. Because even when I was in high school, I went to work when I was 14, 15. I remember my mama counting pennies to buy a loaf of bread. You know, it was just tough times. It's always been important to me to be successful and to make something out of yourself and work hard at it. And so starting my own business, when me and my wife got married, I just been natural in building things. I built our first home for ourselves. And the next thing I know, this one wants me to build a house. This one wants me to build. So I become a home builder. And from a home builder, the mid-'80s were tough. So I had to come up with some idea of how can we continue this. And so I had an idea of taking mobile homes as trade-ins on homes. And so I did that. And so before you know it, I had so many mobile homes, I needed a place to put them. So I ended up being able to come up with a lucky deal there on a mobile home park. So I moved most of my mobile homes into that park. And then in there, I had inherited a guy that worked at Texaco Pipeline. And so I set up a cabinet shop behind the mobile home park because I had an extra acre back there. And once I did that, he would come back there and visit me. And one day he told me his boss wanted some cabinets built in his office. So I ended up in his office building cabinets. And one day I heard him on the phone picking it up and down and slamming it down. And I said, Mr. Jimmy, so what's the problem? He said, I got a pipeline leak in the yard and I can't get a contract out here to dig it up. And I said, well, Mr. Jimmy, I got a backhoe. And so he sits back and says, well, what's a carpenter doing with a backhoe? I said, well, I do build houses and I got to grade the yards, sewer lines, do water lines and all that. Oh, so you know how to run it? I said, well, yeah, I know how to run it. So he gets back on the phone and I go back to hanging that next cabinet door and I hear the phone slam down again and he slams it down and I turn around. I said, now what? He said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm trying to finish your cabinets. He said, boy, the heck with them cabinets, go get that backhoe. And next thing I know, I ended up in the pipeline business, and that was right at 40 years ago. And so that's what we've been doing, and it's and it led me into wanting to solve problems in our state level, and that's why I wanted to run for senator, because I felt I could make a difference. And I've been solving problems now for 6 years.
That is incredible. Like, you're an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. You built the first business, the home building business. It was something that you did to provide for your family, to make sure you guys had a home, and then you kept that up. You put some innovation on it, started taking in the mobile homes. Then you had the park, and even while you're doing that, you had the cabinet business, and then that led to the opportunity to get a contract, literally by just asking a question. Like, that is that is entrepreneurship in a nutshell. And then to take what you've learned in entrepreneurship and then take it to the Senate. That definitely speaks to who you are and the impact that you want to make. Now, I'd like to take a step back. A lot of our viewers are younger. Could you explain what actually is a state senator for some of our younger viewers?
Well, what it is, each state is set up with a Senate and a House, just like the federal government is. And then you have your governor who signs off on the bills. And so as a state senator, you've tried to make laws that make the community better for the whole state, make the community have some, I guess, a stake in it, is why we're set up in districts. My district covers 2 parishes. A lot of some of the districts that have a really low population, they may cover up to 8 districts. And then you have House of Representatives, they cover so many districts within each Senate district. And so then you have a team effort between your House representatives that are in your district and the senator. There's 39 senators in the state of Louisiana and 105 House representatives. And so basically, a senator goes up there or a House rep goes up there to help solve problems. Whatever comes up that they think they can fix.
Wow, that's impressive, and thank you for breaking it down. You have so many different layers to the people that are trying to support the community. Now, when you start to look at your community at large, so all throughout Louisiana, but then specifically in District 20, what are some of the priorities or the strategic goals that you've kind of set, or your community is bubbling up to you?
Well, what's happened in the last, I guess, 10 years is our problems with homeowner insurance, and with the hurricanes. The hurricanes have been a big travesty to my district. We're right on the coast. I'm in, Terrebonne and Lafourche, border the Gulf. And so when Ida came through, which is the strongest storm to ever cross the Louisiana line, and a few years back, it did some great devastation to a lot of homes, but not as much as it could have been, because over the years, we changed our building codes, and a lot of things we've changed has got us to where we're sustainable. We've built our own levee system around our 2 parishes. It's called the Morganza to the Gulf. If we wouldn't have had that levee system during Ida, you would have had over 11,000, and you didn't have any flood inside the levee system. And that's what the great effort we've done by taxing ourselves. And finally, the federal government saw what we were doing, and they've been helping out a little bit lately on raising our levees to a higher level. Actually, Ida was right at the limit, so we had like 6 inches to spare. Thank God that we had built it to that elevation, and now we're going to plan on going up another 3 feet, because, not going to get much stronger than Ida. And what's happened is we've lost a lot of our land on our coast. And so in the old days, when a hurricane would come in, the tidal surge it brings with us, which is up to 30 foot possibly, every mile of wetlands would knock it down a foot. So you used to have 30 to 40 miles of wetlands before it mainly got to the main towns in the state. And so it wasn't a big deal. But now with all of that gone, you might have 1 or 2 miles of marsh left that can bring the height down. And that's what we're fighting now is our land loss. And we've spent a lot of money, state money on saving our coast.
Wow, it's even sometimes hard to put into reality as somebody who hasn't been in a hurricane before. But the fact that you guys have lost land to the sea level that was naturally protecting you, now you have to make the levee so tall that even Ida that came in, there was only 6 inches to spare. Wow, that is. I know your constituents have to be thanking you that you guys were had the forethought to put these things in place and are even continuing to take it a step further. Now, speaking on that, what are some of the bills that you've been a part of that you've been very proud of recently?
Well, I guess we can kind of jump to that. I was going to say this is that leveeing the Mississippi River off and stopping all that natural flow down all of our bayous. Bayou Lafourche has one major bayou that would silt down and protect our coast. And then you had 5 bayous in Terrebonne Parish that would have that. And so by doing that is the wetland loss has been blamed. One of my bills I've been trying to pass and fighting was what we call the legacy lawsuits. You got a bunch of lawyers wanting to sue the oil companies for the land loss. And it's, if you get down to it, to me, when they dug those flotation canals to go drill a well, everybody made money off of that back in the day. Everybody did reap their benefits, but now you want to go back 100 years and sue these oil companies for something they didn't even have anything to do with just because they got the same name. Not necessarily they got permits. They did everything legally, but now they're suing them and trying to grab a bunch of big bucks, and causing a lot of our oil industry is left town. They're just going somewhere else, and that's my district has lost 10,000 people in the last redistricting, and they're gone, between the hurricanes and fighting insurance and these lawsuits, all companies are not coming back until all this is over with. And I don't know when that's going to be, but for 6 years, I've been pushing that to solve that problem by just putting a prescription that you can't sue back more than 10 years. Most civil lawsuits are 10 years, and that's one of my big push. I hadn't got it done yet. I hope it's coming soon, but we'll keep working at it. One of the other bills, that I pushed hard for was for our state troopers back in the day. When I first got here, I noticed our state troopers, if something happened to them and they were only on the job for 2 to 3 years, their families would be left devastated because they didn't have a big retirement. So what I passed for our state troopers was I passed a bill if something happened to them on their first day of job, that their family would get full retirement. And so that was a big deal that now they can go to work and not be worried about what happens to their family if something happens to them. And so those are a couple of the things that I've done. I've passed a number of other good issues. I'm fighting one of the other bills is getting fluoride out of our water. We've been putting fluoride in our water since 1945, and come to find out it's a poison. It's actually considered a hazardous waste. It's on the hazardous waste list that you have to wear protective clothing to put it in our water, but we're drinking it. And so I've had a big push. I got it through the Senate this past session. Couldn't get it through the House because some stories were told in the House that how great this stuff is and not the real truth. And I will push it back again to make sure we can get fluoride. Fluoride shouldn't be in anybody's drinking water. There's no reason we should be drinking and stop and think about people say, oh, well, I'm buying my water now or I'm filtering my water. But if you're not filtering it to get the fluoride out, which is hard to do, every time you take a shower or a bath, you consuming fluoride because your body soaks it up. And that's a big push for me to get that. I don't think we should be putting poison in our water.
Wow, those are awesome. Some very big issues. It sounds like with the lawsuit, if you're able to kind of, I'm not a lawyer, but like create some sort of like statute of limitations, it would allow you to work with the oil companies that are bringing back the jobs in the community, because it sounds like they're kind of waiting around. Just for this. Oh, go ahead.
One of the things I'd like to say to you is how much they've been helping. One of the oil companies donated 4,000 acres to the to the Terrebonne Parish and it's kind of in a wetlands area and all, but it's fantastic. So what I did this past session is I passed a bill and made it a new state park. And so now we can develop that state park and bring more tourists back to our area and do it that way. But that's how much the oil companies are trying to help, but they're still suing them left and right. They just supposedly, I'm sure it's going to go to the Supreme Court, but they just won a case in Plaquemines Parish, 800 and right at $800 million, and that's just one company in one parish. And so that's not going to fix things. We need to understand that these companies did it as a profit, yes, but guess what? Everybody made money at the same time 30 to 100 years ago. Like I said, the Mississippi River is the cause of our land losses because those flotation canals, in my science, and I'm not no scientist, but I use what my common knowledge is. If all of that the Mississippi River silt and all was flowing down our bayous, every one of those flotation canals would be filling up with silt. And so you'd have to keep dredging them just to get in. So you'd be creating land. But all that silt now goes off the mouth of the river, now dumps in a big hole in the Gulf, and it's never going to be, it would take another million years to fill that deep crevice up.
Wow. Yeah, no, that is very interesting. And it sounds like you've created a relationship with the companies to try to support the community, even when they're not back in the community yet. And I think that is great for your community to be able to have another attraction there to bring in some tourism dollars. So I definitely think you're getting creative there. And then our people in public safety, we hate to ever see when a tragedy happens, but whether it's on the first day or the 20th year, I agree. I think providing some type of safety net for families whose family member is risking their life every day, and just to create some type of safety net for them. I'm sure your community and especially the members in public safety truly appreciate that. When I start to think about government in general, there can be some misconceptions. What do you think, if any, that the average American may be missing, or there may be a misconception about what actually happens in state government?
Well, there's so many stories that are twisted back and forth. We could sit here and talk on things for hours on that. But I guess to cut it short is there's not we're not up there to pass a law that's going to hurt anybody. This is how I vote. I vote with common sense for the good of the people. And if it doesn't make common sense, maybe we don't need that law. But if it makes common sense and makes things better, then I'll push as hard as I can for it, because I think, and it works on both sides of the aisle, whether you're Democrat, Republican. I mean, I get along great. We team up, we do things. We come to an agreement. We don't always agree on everything because they got certain issues they think that they need to go, far as a Democrat side, and the Republicans got their, but I think it's more of a common sense effort to come together and let's do it as a whole and make sure everybody is provided a better.
I love that. And you read my mind. That is definitely one of the questions, because it's a misconception, I think, across America that it's our team versus their team. But if you really want to get anything accomplished, it has to be just that, a level of teamwork.
Well, to me, I go back to, if it don't make common sense, man, why, there's so many things, just even, up there in Washington. Look, there's so many things that don't, why would you be against this? Why would you be against that? Why, I just don't, I don't know. So hopefully that problem don't hit in Louisiana, because I think we're doing a pretty good job here.
For sure. Yeah. Even, we've had conversations separately, and you were just talking about some of the people that you respect on the other side that have done some great things. Just to isolate that, are there any examples of maybe a bipartisan issue or a bill that you've worked on, or initiative that you had to work across the aisle that you're particularly proud of?
Well, some of those bills, they always say it takes 2 to 3 years to get good legislation passed. So I got a number of things I've done that I think, it crossed the aisles, and actually one of them was a bill to to go ahead and stop the spraying of the chemtrails in the skies. I mean, a lot of people don't even know what's going on with that, but they call it geoengineering. Tennessee passed it as chemtrails. Federal government says, well, we don't even know what that is. We do geoengineering. So they admitted they're doing something. So anyway, I passed a bill in Louisiana to stop all geoengineering in our skies because they're spraying aluminum oxide and all kind of other crap in our air to stop global warming. I don't, my personal opinion, I don't believe in global warming. I got a bunch of things we could sit and talk about, and I'll tell you why. But it's to me, it's not in existence. And one of my famous questions is, didn't we have an ice age over North America? Everybody agrees with that. My question is when did it stop melting back? And everybody just gets stunned. Well, it's still melting back. You go up there, North Alaska, it's still falling in the water. Man, ain't had nothing to do with it, So anyway, the whole part about it is that bill that I passed, the governor signed it. It's real. And if we don't stop them trying to do geoengineering, what have they? They've been doing this since the early 50s. And we, and that's why you see Alzheimer's and everything else coming out, because aluminum settles in your brain. I got it built, and they're still spraying us like crazy because I can only control up to 2,000 feet in the air, and they can spray as high as they want in the altitude, whatever altitude they want, 10,000 feet, whatever. But anyway, just this morning, I was in my backyard and they just covering the sky with it. Everybody said, oh, well, no, that's contrails, condensation. No, condensation, if you look at most jets that's passing, if it's normal condensation, that tail of condensation fades away right within 15, 20 minutes. When you see though that trail starts spreading out and kind of just growing like a cloud, that's they spraying you. They even putting it in some of the jet fuel now. So
yeah, you got to excuse my ignorance, Big Mike. I wasn't aware of geoengineering. Now,
well, you need to look it up.
Yeah. Now, these are questions that are coming from me, not necessarily podcast questions. So when you're talking about, this is the federal government that's doing this, or,
yes,
or who?
They pay different departments. They get funding, and they think they're going to slow down the global warming or whatever they want to call it, climate change. They changed the name from global warming to climate change. But just look up, if Hurricane Ivan passed over the coast of Alabama in 2007, it was one of the strongest storms ever crossed the Alabama coast. And it pulled 5 to 6 foot of silt off the Gulf floor, Gulf of America now, the Gulf of America floor, and it pulled the silt off, and it created about a quarter square mile of great fishing. And so everybody wanted to know why is the fishing so great? It's 15 miles offshore in 65 foot of water. You can look up the video. They went out and studied it. So some divers went out and decided they want to know why all these fish are there. And guess what? It's a 60,000-year-old cypress swamp had got uncovered. And so you got cypress trees laying on the floor of the Gulf, and you got all the stumps from the gigantic cypress stumps with fish growing in there, living in there, and then the bigger fish eating them. And it's one heck of a fishing spot where Alabama people wanted to go out and start pulling up the cypress, and they had to make it a safety, a special sanctuary, and not let them do that. But there's a whole video on it for 40 minutes. So make sure you have 40 minutes before you watch it, because you don't want to stop watching it. But that kind of proves a point right there. Cypress swamp, 65 foot of water, 15 miles offshore. What happened? Man, wasn't nowhere around.
Wow. Yeah. And just for our viewers, and correct me if I'm wrong, because a lot of the things that you're talking about have to do with environment. So from the fluoride in the water to the geoengineering to how the levees and the wetland interplay with hurricanes. Now, I believe you're on the natural resources and one of the environmental
committee, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, I'm vice chairman of natural resources for the state of Louisiana. Yeah,
that's
a lot of knowledge in that area. I'm not a college graduate. I just went to high school, but I got a lot of learning lessons in the hard way that you don't forget.
For sure, for sure. And no, the wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Now, when we start to look forward, one of the people I had on my podcast, they quoted a book, and they were saying that like the first half of your career, just building, and then you hit a point. And then you start to think very deeply about legacy. Now, when you talk about Louisiana and then District 20 specifically, 25 years from now, what do you want community members to be saying about their community?
Well, I want to say that we survived all of the downfalls that we've been through land loss, by building our own levee system. We were one of the first parishes to ever tax ourselves. And we started this levee system 25 plus years ago, and it's taken all this time to do this. We've been through many a storm since, even all the way back to I guess the 60s of Hurricane Betsy and Hurricane Hilda back when I was probably 5, 6 years old. I remember how the homes wasn't built as strong as they are today, and we've made that change. I mean, the most people that had damage during Ida, which was one of the strongest storms that come across our coast, was because they just need to get a little bit more lesson on roofing. Being a home builder, a 30-year roof's only good for 15 years down here because they test it off of how much rainfall. Well, they tested off of 20 inches of rainfall a year. We get 40, so that cuts the life of your roof in half. So a lot of people, when Ida hit, had the 15-year roof, which the shingles got blown off because they were weakened from the less granules on it, and that's where a lot of the damage come from. If they'd had a new roof on it, the damage would have been minute. And that's why we've even, as a state, we've passed a bill to make fortified roofs, which you put ice and water shield below the shingles. So if the shingles blow off, still no water penetrates into your house. And so we've passed that. We give I think it's a $15,000 credit to people who change their roof over a period of time. But anyway, Alabama started it, and it was very successful. So Louisiana, we put it in place a few years back.
Yeah, no, that sounds very impressive and forward thinking. You want to protect your community members as best you can, and by providing that grant for them to do something proactively instead of reactively to protect their house and themselves seems very forward thinking. Now, another forward thinking question for our young viewers: is there any advice? And you've got a wealth of knowledge outside of even just politics and state government, but specifically, is there any advice you can give a young person who's either thinking about career in public service or even just becoming more civically aware and civically engaged?
Well, what I'd like to see, the first thing they need to do is start out to always be a good person. Always stay on that mode that I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to do whatever I can to help others. The next thing is stay involved with all the community functions as you can. They need to, if that's the way they want to go, that way they meet a lot of people. They meet people that can help them move forward and give them good learning lessons. I just think that they need to be positive too and stay positive. Get all the negativity out your life. All of this, between the youngsters between these phones and public, all of the public stuff that it gets done, and they put everything on Facebook and all that. They need to just get positive. Just all the negativity needs to be left alone. And there's no reason to waste time on that. Another thing is there's 1,440 minutes in every 24-hour day. And my mom used to teach me you got to make every one of those minutes count. And every minute you waste is a minute less you have. And we never know how many of those minutes we have left. So you need to make that count. Make your time successful.
I think that is a great message. I heard two things, or actually, I'll say three things. One is be in your community, understand what moves the community, and start to understand what moves you. But more important than that, be a good person. I think that, we take it for granted, but that's the basis of this. If you want to serve your community, you should be a good person first, and then go out to serve, and then don't waste time. Time is precious. Big Mike, I have to know, being down there and having seen so many just natural disasters. Obviously, we have man-made disasters as well, but just things that occur naturally and how precious life can be. So I think that's great advice. Now, any last words for the viewers just generally before we wrap things up?
Well, just start paying attention to everything that's going on and dig up your own information and don't let somebody twist it on you, because there's so much stuff that, you don't even know what to believe. AI has been a tremendous thing in the good way, but also in the worst way, because you don't know what to believe no more. Make sure you find your facts yourself.
Yeah, no, Mike, you gave me some homework throughout this thing that I need to go brush up on. So no, I appreciate that, and I plan to do my own research and come to my own opinions. But Big Mike, thank you again for being here. You are a wealth of knowledge with so much experience, even outside of the political sphere, and then obviously your 6 years truly pounding the pavement for your community. I appreciate that. So, and then for the viewers, thank you so much for taking the time to tune into the Gentry podcast. Again, we have Michael Fési Sr., who is the state senator of Louisiana representing District 20. And I'm your host, Jonathan Mason. And thank you and have a great one.
Okay, but see y'all later.